Well, it's one thing to have a little White House drama that happens in every administration, but it's another thing when you're completely ineffective. And what's happening here is all the drama, all of the problems in public policy. You just talked about crime, but the border, inflation, supply chain, gas prices. Now COVID has got a new variant. The president said he was going to get it under control. He has not. And then you've got a VP that's unpopular. The bigger issue is this. These two people, the president and vice president, are completely unusable on the campaign trail. We talked about this a couple months ago before the Virginia race. The problem is it's one thing to be at 38% approval, or in Harris's case, 28% approval. The problem is, and what Obama and Trump didn't have, was that they were not completely unpopular within the party. Trump had always 95% approval. People would run through a wall for Trump. And the same was true for Barack Obama. So even though the numbers went up and down, the core support was very strong.
So the Democratic Party's having a really tough time, but the American political system itself is having a tough time. As over the last decade or so, we've been witnessing the acceleration and the rot of our two-party electoral system. And that aside, the fact that Biden and Kamala Harris, the administration, hasn't even been in session for a full year yet, and they're already having this type of just disagreements, you know, key staff members walking out, all of this type of stuff being public, you know, really just shows the further complications that are going to be in place, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are not only unpopular within the nation, but they're unpopular within the Democratic Party itself. And much of that has to do with the fact that the Democratic Party is much more divided and much less homogenous than the Republican Party is. When you poll people on the issues, you know, Republicans and Democrats typically are on the same lines with, you know, increased access to things like education, better health care, you know, what have you. However, it's the culture war, which, as we know, the Republican Party is more obsessed with than anything else, that keeps Republican voters on the same side. The Democratic Party is much less homogenous. There's much more different minority groups within it. And, you know, since it's liberal, there's a lot more different kinds of people within the mix. And so within, you know, the 2020 primaries, we saw that. You know, we saw how, you know, Bernie had a huge portion of, you know, obviously the progressives and other people. But, you know, Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris and you know, more of the centrist candidates, they kind of all were picking from each other. And when Biden ended up winning, it was because, you know, the majority of those voters kind of coalesced around him. And we see that division. And so really a lot of what that means is that, you know, there's really not going to be any viable candidates to do better than Joe Biden at the ballot box in 2024, because they're going to have the entire establishment behind them, and it's just going to be a really tough challenge. That window of opportunity likely won't be as open until 2028. And so it's really, really a big deal that, you know, we're getting to the midterms and so much of Biden's legislative agenda is out the window now. It can't happen. It won't happen. And, you know, the Democrats always pretend as if they have no choice but to cave into Republicans. But that's really because in a lot of ways that's reality. You know, they're there not because the public approves of them, not because the public likes them. They're there because they depend on corrupt corporate dollars to keep them in office. And so again, as I pointed out at the beginning of this video, our two-party system keeps the Democratic Party in a deadlock, and it keeps the Republican Party what it is. And every so once in a while the parties flip, but what's really changing?